What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with another video, and today we've got the box office breakdown for this weekend of March 6th to March 8th. And the big news story of the day, of course, is how is CV going to have an impact on the box office, and also, especially, how is that going to have an impact on Disney? And it looks like it already is having an impact on Disney in that their newest release from Disney Pixar, Onward, has opened to a muted, as it says here by the Hollywood Reporter, and many other sites are using other language for it, $40 million opening weekend here domestically, making only $28 million in the worldwide marketplace, meaning this film opened to $68 million in its opening weekend. This, of course, being a Disney Pixar film, which normally has gigantic worldwide releases, not so much anymore. Now, I know there's a lot of people speculating that people are trying to use CV as a major excuse as to why films aren't doing nearly as well as the box office, but I do think that there is some truth to that, especially in the foreign marketplace, because remember, a lot of these films, especially films from Disney, tend to make crap tons of money in the foreign marketplace, especially in places like China, like Italy, which are being tremendously affected by what's going on right now in the world. And so for this film to not make a lot of money, and also to not get a official release in Japan either because of everything going on with CV, I think it is absolutely accurate to say that it is having an impact on the worldwide box office for, at the very least, Onward, or also possibly other films too. Keep in mind that you have other gigantic films coming out in the future, like Mulan, for example, where you had Disney making a major play at the Chinese audience, and yet the film is not set to get a release there on opening weekend, and probably won't get a release there for at least the next 6 months or so, which leads the question, is that film and the series of films coming out from Disney, because of their reliance on the foreign marketplace, going to end up leading to box office busts for them, or are they going to be able to get those films to release in those various countries later on and make that money back up sometime down the road? It's really hard to say at this point in time, but what is interesting is what's being reported here by the Hollywood Reporter, not just that it made $40 million at 4,310 theaters. So again, a lot of people in the United States are also not seeing it. Now, it's harder to make the case that CV is the reason why people in American audiences aren't going to see this film, because it's not really as much of an issue here in the United States as of yet at this point in time. However, we all know that the media has been doing a hardcore campaign, a fear-mongering campaign, covering everything about the illness, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of families staying home and not wanting to go to the theater. And it's not because there's any actual danger, but it's because they believe what the media says, which is already their first mistake, because the media are focused on two things. That's ratings, and also that's always trying to do everything they can to make things seem worse than what they actually are, because that's what keeps eyeballs on their screens. So what is interesting is the fact that it has only made $28 million out of 47 territories where it has opened. $68 million worldwide is really not that great, but remember, this film was indeed impacted by the fact that it did not get a release in Italy or Japan, because a lot of those theaters are shut down. It does have a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes, which really doesn't make all that much. It has been tracking for a $40 to $45 million range, but remember, keeping in mind that originally it was around $55 million that it was projected to make. They thought that maybe the Saturday matinees would have been able to pull it back up, but it looks like the film's either going to end right at $40 million, or again, these are still estimates, so if it doesn't perform well on Sunday like they're expecting it to, you could see the film make even underneath $40 million, which is going to be well below what many people had expected. What is interesting are the films that are being presented and are being compared to this one. So, of course, it's interesting that Pixar's lowest nationwide openings include 95's Toy Story, which had 29.1 million, but remember, you have to adjust that number for inflation, so it's really not fair to put that number up on the screen. And here's probably, I think, the closer one, 2015's The Good Dinosaur. So basically, this film is having about as good of a release as The Good Dinosaur did. And what's interesting is that The Good Dinosaur ended up making around $300 million or so worldwide by the end of its run. The problem with this film, the problem with Onward, is that if we assume it has the budget of most recent Disney Pixar films, it means the budget of this movie was somewhere in the $200 million range, which means when you account for marketing, which again, you multiply the production budget by 1.5 is a standard number that most people spend, it means that they spent roughly $300 million on the entirety of the movie. If it only makes $300 million worldwide, keep in mind, they don't keep 100% of those profits. They only get 60% or so of those profits. And then you have to, of course, take that number that they get and subtract the production costs. So you're looking at a movie that in all likelihood, could be a major box office bomb because of it not being able to open in these foreign marketplaces. So again, there's a couple things to talk about here. One, it shows why and how big of a mistake it was for Disney to focus so much more on putting their films out in foreign markets, for foreign audiences, kowtowing to the Chinese censors, kowtowing to all these other countries with all their other standards. Because what it means is that because they rely so heavily on those countries for these massive big budget hits, go ahead and look even to films like Frozen and Frozen 2. Again, most of the money that they make from those films come from those foreign countries. And so because they've been making a huge play, especially with Mulan coming up for Chinese audiences, and many other countries, I think that it's showing that they've made a huge gamble and they're going to end up losing. And I mentioned this on a video on my channel that I did yesterday, talking about how I think Disney's box office in 2020 could face catastrophic failure because of how much money they've put into these movies and how little return on their investments, and in some cases, how even financial loss could end up being a terrible year for Disney for a lot of different reasons. And so I think this is definitely the tip of the iceberg. It's definitely something that we'll be, following and watching, because again, could see a giant bump as the weeks go on if it does get released in these other countries where it's currently not getting released. If CV starts to get better, obviously, then we could see an impact of that in the positive direction for Disney as well. And also, we really don't know whether they're just going to delay those releases in those other countries or if they're just going to scrap those releases altogether. Either way, it's not looking very good for Disney at this point in time. And if it's not looking good for Disney, probably won't be looking good for a lot of other places. I know, River, I feel the same way as well. But looking at Onward, as I said, it's projected to make around $40 million domestically. That international number, again, is still waiting on other countries to report, but it's expected to make around $28 million. Again, $68 million opening weekend, one of the worst opening weekends in Disney Pixar history. Invisible Man is up to $72.8 million worldwide, and I think we're still waiting on some international box office numbers for that. So this film right here is making crap tons of money. There's no way to spin that. It is making crap tons of money. Sonic the Hedgehog also in the profitability category. However, a huge blow to Sonic is the fact that it's not getting the Japan release that was expected. And of course, we all know it was expected to make a decent amount of change from Japan. Seeing that this film not only does not have a China release and does not have a Japan release, this film is not set to make that much more money. Again, we don't know if they're going to delay those releases or cancel the releases. We don't know how long CV is going to impact those countries. What I can say, though, is that it's going to have an impact on Sonic, which is, again, at the point of profitability, which is a good thing, but it's definitely going to cut back on the actual profits that this film is going to be able to make because it's not opening up in those markets. Another new release this weekend is Ben Affleck's $8.5 million domestic opening for The Way Back, which is definitely not that great by all standards, but we don't have an actual number here for how much this film costs. I imagine this was a low-budget film, so it very well could be fine for this movie to not make that much money. It is definitely a comeback story in a lot of ways because it's about a basketball coach that's struggling with alcoholism. Definitely a lot as far as, connecting with the life of Ben Affleck and his own struggles with alcoholism as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what those numbers come in. And again, we'll have to wait and see if we get any international numbers because this is definitely seeming to be more of an American release than anything else. Call of the Wild, $91.2 million worldwide. As I've mentioned previously before, this film is set to lose roughly around $100 million. Everything going on with CV is not helping this film in the national marketplace where it's only made $33 million, and no one's going to see it here in the United States either. Again, I think that we really can expect, and this is just my own personal thought, if they had used actual real-life dogs for this movie, I'm wondering whether or not that could have been enough to push this film over the edge. I know it would have made me want to actually go see this film, but because it uses a really bad version of a CGI dog that just doesn't seem like a dog, but seems more like a human dog, just doesn't really work all that much. While Birds of Prey continues to flounder around, again, making some extra money in the national marketplace, but $191 million worldwide at this point in time. Still a long way off from profitability and probably will never actually reach that point of breaking even. But if you want to see me break these movies down even more so, go check me out over on my main channel, Odin's Movie Blog. Again, I have a spreadsheet that I like to work on, and once we get some foreign numbers for these movies and foreign updates, I'll be able to give you what the expected losses are for a couple of films, but also what we have right now for Onward. Again, Onward at this point in time is really at the point of being like negative $150 to negative $200 million in the red at this point because of how much money it costs to make and also how little money it is made at this point. It's going to be insane. And of course, next weekend, I'll be able to make my predictions about what I think this film's going to make. What I can say, though, is that because of the uncertainty of CV, the impact it's going to have on the foreign marketplace, the impact it's going to have even here in the United States. It's going to be very hard to predict what the final number on Onward is going to be, because if we get releases down the road in foreign countries, that obviously can boost the numbers. If we don't get them, then this could easily come in underneath expectations as well. It's going to be interesting, though. It's going to be fascinating. And you know what, Disney? As much as I'm praying for all those that are being affected by CV, I'm praying for especially the elderly who are passing away because of infections due to CV. I think that it's something that Disney is absolutely deserving to receive this type of box office failure, because we all know that they have been putting so much attention on putting identity politics in their film. They try to do it with this one, and guess what? People aren't going out in droves to see it here in the States, and because of everything going on around the world, you're not getting any of that money either. And so I think that there's definitely going to be a lot of studios and people that try to use CV as the only excuse as to why films don't do as well. But I will say that they definitely have a case to be made because of not being able to release in various countries, especially a giant box office hub like China. And again, it's affecting other films that we enjoy too, like Sonic the Hedgehog, which is not going to get that Japanese release and still hasn't gotten a China release either. So again, these are all things we'll be following, but whenever Disney's losing money, that's usually fine with me. But again, I wish it was under different circumstances, because I don't like the fact that, people are being affected in a negative way by it in real life. But at the same time, too, this is a film that I just didn't really want to see all that much anyway. And especially since they tried to push it in their marketing saying, oh my gosh, we're doing representation, everybody. And the film's not making any money again. Good Dinosaur levels is what we're talking about. And Good Dinosaur was definitely not a huge box office success. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about this. Have you seen Onward? Is it any good? Are you a fan of it at all? Again, I like the voice actors doing it. Chris Pratt does the voice of the older brother, and what's his name? Tom Holland, who's Spider-Man, does the voice of the younger brother here. So I like those voice actors overall, but it just doesn't seem that interesting to me. But let me know your thoughts about this, or possibly even also The Way Back as well, or any of the films we talked about in the comments section below. Also, make sure you check me out over on the Odin's Movie Vlog channel. If you like this video, smash the like button, give me a subscribe. It helps me a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.